Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is the place where we help mission-driven messengers just like you learn how to build and monetize your personal brand. My name is Rory Vaden, and I'm the co-founder of Brand Builders Group, a Hall of Fame speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. And this show is to help experts learn how to become more wealthy and well-known. I know you're going to love it. Thanks for being here. Let's get started.
One of my favorite things to do on this show is bring you people who I find intellectually stimulating and brilliant and genius. And that's what we're going to do today. You're going to meet my friend Marcus Sheridan, who I've known of for years, and we've kind of been colleagues, and we've known each other. We got a chance to get to know each other more over the last couple years. And we're going to talk about how to use content to create more conversions, how to sell through content, how to make a content strategy a part of your trust-building strategy. He is one of the world's leading experts on sort of inbound marketing and trust-based selling, and we're going to talk about some of his legacy principles and also his new book, Endless Customers, which is exactly what we want to create for you, a stream of never-ending, endless customers right to your business. He's been featured in Forbes, Harvard Business Review. His story's been in the New York Times. He's an entrepreneur several times over. We'll talk about some of that, but most of all, we're going to focus on how to use content to create endless customers. Marcus, welcome to the show, buddy.
Roy, it's overdue, man. I'm so happy to be here with you and your community that I'm a part of, so this is really fun for me.
Yeah. So for people who are just meeting you for the first time, I want you to talk about They Ask You Answer, because this is, one of your sort of flagship philosophies that I think you really brought into the market. It's been a staple for years. What is They Ask You Answer, and how does that apply to personal brands?
Yeah, where it came from is I started a swimming pool company in Virginia called River Pools 2001. Things were going okay, but then the market crashed in 2008, 2009. A lot of people remember that. It was a hard time for a lot of companies, especially pool companies. Looked like we were going to go out of business. But the cool thing, as you know, Rory, about pain and suffering is it forces us to get outside of our comfort zone and do things that we probably wouldn't have done otherwise. It's that YOLO moment. It's like, okay, let's just full send. And this is when I really started to study how buyers were changing, how the internet was changing. And I said, okay, based on all these things that I was studying, like inbound content, marketing, social media, all that stuff, what I really heard in my mind was, Marcus, if you just obsess over your customers' questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns, and you're willing to address those online, especially on your website, you might save your business. So I said, okay, well, if there's one thing I can do is I can lean into those things, because I've been selling pools at this point for about 7 years. I knew the questions. And so I literally, like one night, Rory, I brainstormed every question I'd received over the years about in-ground swimming pools, fiberglass swimming pools, which is what we sold, and came up with a couple of hundred. And then over the next couple of years, every single night, literally, I would produce a piece of content, article or video, and publish it online, either on our website or YouTube, etc. And we became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world. It totally took off. And as soon as it took off, I said, everybody should be doing this. Like, why wouldn't anybody? Like, this is so powerful. And so I started to write about it on a personal blog. And that was late 2009. And I didn't get any traction for about a year. Then I started to get traction. And then I started having folks say, can you teach me how to do that thing you're doing with your pool company? Can you speak about that on our stage? And as soon as I started speaking, just a little bit, because that was always my thing, boom, it was off to the races from there. And so by 2012, I was speaking professionally. The book, They Ask You Answer, came out in 2017. But for many people, it became the Bible of content marketing, because finally a book was written that gave you a really definitive framework on how to do content marketing. Up to that point, there really weren't any frameworks, and you can appreciate this. And in fact, one of the biggest reasons I became attracted to your content, and I don't know if I don't think I've told you this, is because the first time I saw you speak, I think it was on my Let's Pod, but it could have been somebody else's. I said, that guy thinks like me. And what I meant by that is you think in frameworks. I didn't know that I was a framework guy until later on in life. It started to become very evident. Like I had written some books in my early 20s. They were framework based. And then I did this as a pool guy, and it was all framework based. And finally I was like, wow, I now understand the power behind it, right? Which is pretty cool. And, that book really did change my life. And a lot of people, hundreds of thousands, have now implemented this mindset of they ask, you answer in their business all over the world. It's really been cool to watch.
So you may not know this, so that's really cool to hear, because the first time I heard your name was one of my best friends and mentors, Jay Bear. He was the one telling me about you because he wrote a book called Utility, and I saw him speak, and that was like, I fell in love with him as a fan, just like, oh my gosh, he's so smart. And then we became friends later, and he was the one that was like, you got to check out Marcus. Like, you got to hear about Marcus. And I think that was where a lot of my content marketing philosophy was shaped, was sort of that era of going, answer every single question your prospect has, and you're going to build trust, you're going to add value. One of the things that you said is, you've said that 80% of the sale happens before they even ever get on the phone with you.
Yeah.
Why do you think that? And what do you think are the things that people are doing wrong where they lose the 80% sale before they even get to the prospect?
Yeah, so this number is growing literally by the day. At this point in time, because we have resources all around us, we can get all the answers we want. And essentially, we've become infovores as humans. Is we want to feel confident, comfortable, and informed before we reach out to a company. So we know that the average buyer today is more than 80% through that typical buyer's journey before they reach out to a company, okay? You take that stat, and there's one other stat I think it's really prominent, and we could talk about it maybe later, but it just runs in conjunction with it. We also know that, it's from Gartner, 75% of all buyers today say they would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. So people just don't want to talk to a salesperson until they are really confident, comfortable, informed. This is critical. So the question then becomes, well, who are they going to learn from? Are they going to learn from you, or are they going to learn from someone else, right? And I always had the mindset of, I want them to learn from me. Now, it's gotten a little bit more complicated because AI has certainly made that, instead of them getting the information from your website, now they might get it from AI. But still, even AI has to get it from someone, and I want AI sourcing me. I want the human sourcing me. And the big mistake that people make, Roy, is they don't actually answer the questions that buyers want to know. And there's a really simple way that you can figure out what do buyers want to know. We call it in the system, today it's called, of course, Endless Customers, but it's called the Big Five. And the Big Five are the 5 subjects that drive every buying decision. Like when you research something, I research something, B2B, B2C, doesn't matter, product, service, we are constantly researching 5 things before we reach out to a company.
Okay.
Right? So here's the 5. Number 1, we want to know
So
how
these are the 5 things that every prospect researches before they even reach out to buy something.
This is literally the economy of search right here, okay? This is how people say, oh, I like you. I think I'm going to reach out to them. Number 1, as buyers, consumers, we want to know roughly how much is it. It is the literal gateway of the buyer's journey. How much does it cost roughly? And once we get that question answered, then we feel like we can move forward in the journey. We start to vet companies as well, but we want to know roughly how much is it. And we should spend some time talking about that one because that's a big resistor. Everybody loves to resist talking about that one, right? Number 2, we're obsessed with problems. Like, how could this go wrong? How could this blow up in my face? Turns out when we want to spend money on something, we want to know how could it go wrong. So that's a big one. Most companies want to ignore that. A very quick example of that. Think about how many attorneys in the world have answered the single most repeated question from someone that is looking at litigation. Someone that's looking at litigation, the most repeated question is, what if I lose my case? Find me an attorney in the world right now that addresses that question on their website. Yet everybody's thinking it. Every attorney has been asked the question. Nobody wants to talk about that. So that's number 2, problems or fears, right? Number 3, comparisons. We're obsessed with the comparisons. We're constantly comparing stuff online. Brand versus brand, company versus company, product versus product, method versus method. Just go down the list. We love to compare stuff. Number 4, reviews. The thing about reviews is we don't just want the good reviews. We want the bad reviews too. So we want the good, the bad, and the ugly. which is why the greatest reviews don't just say who the product is for. That's a big mistake. If you just do that, you want to say who the product is or service is not a good fit for. Then you become dramatically more attractive. And then finally, number 5 is best. Best, most, top. We love to almost like file things in our mind and say, okay, I feel like
who's the best?
Yeah. Think about how many times you've gone online, you search best product or service in such and such location. I mean, you've done it like hundreds of times at this point. Everybody does it. So cost, problems, comparisons, reviews, best. That's the big 5. That's what people want to know. That's what they're asking your sales team right now. That's what they want to know during the 80%. That's what most companies to this day are ignoring. And that's why, generally speaking, they're not trusted nearly as much as they should be.
Yeah, so this is a hot take. You believe that companies should publish their prices right on their website?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
We should address cost well. Now, how do you do that? Is that okay if I explain that?
Let's talk about that, because this is a question that comes up inside of our community. Is people say, should I put my prices right on my website? And we know that one of the most highly searched terms with Brand Builders Group is Brand Builders Group cost. So we know that what you're saying is very true about us. And there's a lot of debate around, how do you address this? When do you address it? To what level of detail?
Yeah, I mean, I have talked more about this subject literally than any person in the world. I've got more data on it than anyone in the world in terms of cost-based content and what it does in terms of traffic, lead, sales, revenue for companies. It's extraordinary what I've gotten over the course of what's now almost 15 years. Let's just look at the psychology of it for a second, Roy, because this is what's interesting. All right. If I asked you, have you gone online and researched how much something cost recently? You'd say, yeah, of course I have, Marcus. Like, let's say over the last year. If I said to you, when you're on a website and you're looking for cost and price information, you can't find it, what's the emotion you experience? You say, I get really, really frustrated. If I said to you, well, why do you get frustrated? You're like, because I'm the stinking buyer and I'm just trying to get a sense for how much is it. So then if I said to you, well, in that moment, do you say to yourself, well, I'm sure it's on this website somewhere. I'm just gonna keep looking until I find it. No, that's laughable. You don't stay. In fact, we know the average person will stay on a website, if they're looking for cost and price, less than 10 seconds before they leave. So I don't have any patience for that. Number 2, if I said to you, in that moment of frustration, do you as the buyer, do you as the searcher, if you can't find it, do you say to yourself, and this is really important, well, that's okay, they're not talking about it. They're a value-based company. I'll just call them on the phone instead, right? So you don't do that.
Yeah.
Because you as the buyer, you as the searcher, you keep searching, and you search until you find what you're looking for. And generally speaking, whoever gives you what you're looking for, they're going to get your business. If not your business, they're going to get first contact, first phone call. And that is the case for every single person that is listening to this right now. Now, if that being said, if I ask most people, though, are you talking about the cost and price of your product or your service on your website right now? Most would say, no, not really. And the reason is threefold. Number 1, we say, well, it depends. Okay. So if
meaning what the price is depends on what they're buying.
That's the number 1 answer as to why people don't want to address price. Well, it depends. Every job is different. It's very bespoke. We have a customized solution. This is all the things that we say from a psychological perspective. But if I came to you or anybody and I said, can you help me understand the factors that would drive the cost of your product or service up? What are the factors? You'd say, yeah, sure, I can explain those factors. If I said, can you help me understand the factors that would drive it down? Could you explain that? You're like, sure, I can do that. If I said, can you help me understand why some companies in your space are so expensive? You'd say, sure, I could help you understand that. Why are some companies so cheap? You could explain that. If I said to you, can you just give me a rough sense as to where your customers generally fall without giving me exact? You'd say, of course, I can do that. And then depending on the product or service, there's many other components that you can address. In the book, in Endless Customers, I give 15 specific ones that you could talk about for what's called the perfect pricing page, right? There's like a perfect pricing page. And in fact, if you use ChatGPT, if you just go to custom GPTs and you search perfect pricing page or Marcus Sheridan, it will help you produce what is the perfect pricing page, and it'll give you a grade on your existing pricing page right now, just so you have a sense for where you fall right now and how much better it could be. But you notice I didn't say exactly what it is. So that's the first one, is it depends. You want to explain it really, really well through text, through video, okay?
So you're not necessarily saying publish the prices.
Not the exact price.
On the page.
Not the exact price, no. That's up to you, but I do suggest everyone publish at least a floor, helps people get at least a sense for where it is, and then you can give some general ranges. The second reason why companies say we can't talk about cost and price is we say, well, if we put our prices on there and we're more expensive, we just might scare them away. But what we have seen, this is like all the studies show this, the thing that actually scares us today in 2025 and beyond is when we're researching online and we can't find an answer. That's the most scary. That creates the most friction. Ignorance is not bliss online whatsoever. So that's the second component. It's no different than, let's say hypothetically you wanted to go to a new restaurant tonight. We're here in Nashville, and I was researching that restaurant beforehand. Most people do two things to research a restaurant. They look at reviews, they look at the menu. If you look at the menu and there is no pricing, are you going to go? Now, most people in that moment will not go. And it's not because they can't afford it, but it's because the moment they let it blank, they planted a seed of doubt. And when seeds of doubt exist, inertia occurs and we stop. It'd be like you driving by a gas station, you look up at the fuel and the prices for the fuel, which everybody has, and there's nothing there. Can you imagine that? It's like preposterous, but this is what companies do all the time. Now, again, for a service, you don't have to have the exact pricing, but you do need to help them understand roughly how much is it going to be, because that's the gateway to the buyer's journey. The third reason we don't want to talk about cost and price oftentimes is because we say, I don't want my competitors to see it, which is really, really silly, because anybody that's been in the game for any period of time has a pretty good sense as to what their competitors already charge. So it's like, you know what they charge, they know what you charge. This is the big secret, non-secret. You know, when I embraced this mindset of they ask you answer in 2009, I was the first swimming pool company in the world to address how much does a fiberglass pool cost to install. Talked about what drives cost up, what drives cost down, why some companies are expensive, why some companies are cheap. Make a long story short, that article, because we track it in terms of the leads and the revenue that have come from it, that article has generated over $35 million in sales alone for my little company in Virginia. So you think about the ROI of that. 45 minutes to ride to my kitchen table, $35 million in revenue, track back to one single article. So what needs to be on that page then to say I'm answering that well? You've said that's basically what pick an industry, and I'll give an example. So it's super specific.
Let's use like coaching as an example.
Let's do it,
right? Because you go, in the world of coaching, the prices can vary wildly.
Correct. Now,
right?
What are some of those factors that would drive some coaches to be very expensive and some coaches to be really cheap?
I mean, could be the experience level, but I would say the number one thing would be, what is the empirical financial value of the result that you deliver?
Okay, there you go. So that's one of the major factors that you would start with, and you would explain that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one. You know, there's other factors. You might talk about the experience level of the coach themselves. You might talk about the subject matter, because there's some certain industries of coaching they demand much higher rates than other industries, right? It might be the program itself. It might be how often do you meet? Are you meeting with the main person? Or are you meeting with some of their trainees or whatever it is? Is it self-paced, or is it a cohort? Is it, there's all these factors that dictate what you spend with coaching. So the mistake that we make in business is we assume that everybody just knows how to buy stuff. I mean, think about how many times somebody's come to Brand Builders alone and thought, I have never joined a community like this. I got no idea how much, like, what this entails. I got no sense for what it should cost. I don't understand other communities. I got no clue. But we assume everybody understands the game like us. That's the curse of knowledge. You know all about it, right? And we do that to a degree. And so really, when you explain pricing to someone, you start with the industry. In fact, 80% of any piece of content that talks about pricing should be about the industry, not about the company, the industry. Because you're teaching them essentially how to buy, how to make a buying decision. It doesn't matter what it is. The final 20% really is about you, and you can get as specific as you want. I would say, don't be so generic that they are left saying, but I still don't have any clue as to what you're going to charge.
Yeah. All right, I want to shift to talking about content. Specifically, I think one of the things that I think people do wrong or that they leave out of their content marketing strategy is content that converts. I think everybody is so focused on content that attracts, like I want to go viral, I want to get more views, more followers, whatever. But I've heard you talk about creating pieces of like video content specifically for conversions. Yeah. What are some of the keys, and how would a salesperson create a piece of content like that to help them increase their conversions?
Well, there's this goes back to the Big Five, because the Big Five is rooted really in the bottom of the funnel based questions that people ask a salesperson. If you are really, listen, if you're going to blow up your brand to become the most known and create the most viral content, you're going to create very general content that the masses can appreciate. But if you're going to create content that converts, you have to get further down the funnel. You just have to, because otherwise there's no there, right? So you have to give them something specific. If you think about, for example, let's just take the case of a coach, right? So top of funnel might be something very generic that has nothing to do with a coach. It just has to do with maybe just having better habits, right? But that's not about, you don't know that person's looking for a coach yet. They're just looking to solve a problem. But as they start to realize, I need to improve my habits, well, maybe I should get a coach. And so then they start to research middle bottom of the funnel, and middle bottom of the funnel might be who are the best coaches for like stay-at-home moms. Something really specific like that, all right? Best coaches for stay-at-home moms. First of all, that's one of the Big Five. It's a best of search. People do it all the time. You got a very specific, like, who you're targeting there, right? Who are the best coaches? We know what they're looking for. They're looking for a coach, and they're looking for, in their persona is a stay-at-home mom. There's a lot of people that search that, right? So that is much towards the bottom of the funnel. And now we know what that person's looking for. And let me give you an example of how I did this with pools, and I've done it many, many times with many companies since then. One of the things that I did that was an incredible conversion tool, which was highly freaked people out the first time I did it, was I was sitting in Richmond, Virginia one night. This is when I was still a pool guy back in the day. And I met with this couple for like an hour and a half. And they said, Marcus, we like you. We think we want to get this pool from you. But if we don't get this pool from you, is there anybody else that you might recommend? And I thought, oh my goodness, are they really not going to get this pool tonight? They didn't get the pool tonight, Roy, because they were in their mind not ready. They were still looking. And so I had a long drive home, and I thought to myself, well, I didn't make the sale, but they asked the question, which means I need to answer it. So I went home that night, and I wrote an article that was, who are the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia? And I came up with a list of 5 of the best pool builders in Richmond, Virginia, and described each one. Now, how did I choose the 5? Based on who I had lost the most to over the course of what was almost a decade at that point. Yeah, about a decade at that point.
Okay.
Now, when I did this, my 2 business partners freaked out a little bit because they're like, what? You're talking about our competitors on our site. Why would you do that? I'm like, first of all, if they're reading this article, where are they? They're like, oh, well, they're on our website. I'm like, yes, if they're on our site, it means we're winning. But then all of a sudden, when you went online and you started searching reviews, name of competitor, Richmond, Virginia, who were you learning from? You were learning from me. So I started ranking for all of my competitors' keyword phrases, is my point. So people were literally researching my competition. They were learning about them from me, and they were converting on my site. I had a lady one time, she said, Marcus, the craziest thing happened. I was this close to signing a contract with Playmore Pools, who was one of my biggest competitors in Richmond, Virginia. But before I signed that contract, I decided to go online and research their company. And as I was researching their company, I stumbled across this article that you guys had written. I said, my goodness, these guys are so honest. I should probably call them too. And of course, you know what happened, because otherwise it wouldn't be a good story. She bought from us, right? That article, Best Pool Builders, Richmond, Virginia, that year made us about $250,000 in sales. And people are like, but yeah, that's so crazy that you mention your competitors. Today, we've had a huge amount of success with this because now instead of you going to Google, you're going to AI and you're doing the same type of searches, like who are the best coaches for stay-at-home moms on performance or whatever it is. Now, what's happening with AI is it's drawing from content from somewhere. It's got to be trained by someone. And so many of the articles that I did for myself and for my clients where we created best of lists, that's what AI is using today. So one of the differences between They Ask You Answer in the 3rd edition, which is called Endless Customers, and we should talk about why I changed the name. This is relevant. One of the differences in They Ask You Answer, I said, don't put your company on the list because it sounds too self-serving. But because AI came out and people started using it in droves, I was looking literally, it was sourcing my content or the content of my clients. I mean, like I said, I got a ton of data on this, but their names weren't there. The competitors were now there. I'm like, oh my goodness. So we were winning on Google, but we weren't winning with AI. So I had everyone go back and I said, now listen, I want you to redo these articles. To not sound self-serving though, you're going to need to do this in a way where you have a criteria by which you define the best. So it might be the number of reviews that you have. It might be how long you've been in business. It might be whatever factors you want to say dictate if this company is, quote, the best, right? One of the best. It's fine as long as you do it in an honest way. You put yourself on that list, which Riverpools can easily do because we've got so many reviews. We got so many years in business, so much experience, all these things. And so now we're seeing a ton of clients be recommended by AI simply because they're creating these best of lists. Very bottom of the funnel, because that person is looking for a specific company right now to solve their problem right now. That's conversion-based content and ain't never going to go viral.
But just creating basically a best of list.
Just a best of list.
Owning and controlling owning and controlling.
But I mean a really good one, Rory. I'm not talking about a Slack one. I mean a really good one. 1,500 words, all the criteria listed out, a chart that shows the different, criteria and how they stack up against each other. AI will pull from that and then they will be talking about you. And that's a fact. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, it happens. I have produce this content and like 3 days later, AI is recommending that company when people are searching for it. Okay. Any coach could do that right now. Any coach. Most coaches won't do it because it sounds, wow, gee, I've just never done that before. But I can tell you, if you want to do content that stands out, you need to be willing to do that which others have not been willing to do. And if someone's asking it, well then talk about it.
Where do you find out the questions that people are asking? Is there a tool that you're using to see what they're asking about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tools. I mean, I've always said that the best keyword tool, though, was just your ears and listening really well, like obsessively listening. For years, when I was still a pool guy, Roy, I would sit in a home, somebody would ask me a question, and I'd say, before I answered it, I'd literally think, have I answered that on my website? And if so, why are they asking me this? Why don't they know this? They should know this. And that's the conversation happening in my head. And so make sure you're obsessively listening to the things that you're hearing every single day. But number 2, at this point, AI is just phenomenal. You could go easily online right now. And if you said, hey, to ChatGPT, you're an expert, Marcus Sheridan, They Ask You Answer, Endless Customers framework. I want you to brainstorm 75 titles under his big 5, cost, problems, comparisons, reviews, best. I want you to follow all of his methodologies. I want the titles to be SEO friendly, but also have a strong hook. Go. And I'm telling you, it'll crush. And they are just money. There's so much, just like there's so much training content out there for you at this point. Like for me, I look at these brainstorms it does. I'm like, it's like I'm sitting in that person's living room coaching them right now. It's wild.
You mentioned you changed the title. You went from They Ask You Answer to Endless Customers.
Yeah.
So what's the story there?
Yeah. Well, when I was listening to some chap named Roy Vaden one time, and he was talking about, I'm going to use my words here. It might not be your exact words, but what I took from it, and by the way, man, the amount of people I have taught this to now is a crazy high number. I realized that although They Ask You Answer was great, it didn't pass the I Want, I Wish test. right? So the I want, I wish test, for those that are listening, most of you know it, is ideally you should be able to say before the title, I want or I wish. Like, I want to win friends and influence people. I wish I could have a 4-hour work week, right? And it's a very simple to say. The problem with they ask you answer, and this is the thing that many, quote, authors, thought leaders, etc. do, is they name it the framework or the secret sauce. The problem is, they ask you answer did really, really well over the course of, the 7-8 years it's been out, mainly as a referral-based book or people seeing me speak about it.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody walked by it on a shelf and said, that right there is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I heard that from you, I was like, oh my, because I always felt like the Ask You Answer was so good, it easily could have done 1 million copies. Instead, it did 100-some thousand copies, right? And so I'm like, well, let's change the title on this 3rd edition. A lot of people said that's crazy, but I was totally, because the Ask You Answer it's still a framework therein, but it's not the title of the book.
Yeah, I mean, the analogy that we use a lot of times is it's the difference between the vehicle and the destination.
Yeah.
And when you created the framework, when you created the methodology, you're so passionate about it. You want to give it to everybody. And so you name your book, your program, your title, whatever, you name it about the vehicle. But what people really want is the destination. And in order to get them to buy, you have to market about the destination. And so I love that you made that move, because that is, they ask you answers like, I don't know what it is unless you've explained it to me.
Yeah.
Endless customers, it's like, oh, I want to know how to get that. And they ask you answers, your vehicle to get endless customers, which is the destination.
Yeah. And because I personally work with brand builders, we launched the book. It was written a lot more system oriented. So I really said, I want this to be more like the EOS of, in this case, content. If you want to become the most known and trusted brand in your market and you want a content strategy, Endless Customers is going to show you exactly how to do it. Mm-hmm. And, it hit the USA Today bestseller list. We were using you guys in that process, which was great to see, and, so
it was really a relaunch of a new edition, and you just changed the name.
Yeah. And here, but one more story about the power of titles, because it's a big deal, and your audience will really appreciate this. And I probably shouldn't say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. It might get me in trouble. So I did They Ask You Answer through Wiley, and I went to them and I said, I want to do a 3rd edition of the book. And on the first 2 editions, this might surprise people, I didn't get any advance. I was an unknown author. They didn't expect They Ask You Answer to do that well. It did way, way, way better than people anticipated. Mm-hmm. So I was one of those risky authors. I had never gotten an advance, and I was talking to one of the heads at Wiley, and I said, I want to do a 3rd edition. They said, we're not really wanting to do a 3rd edition, Marcus. They Ask You Answer doing fine. I'm like, AI's come out. It needs a 3rd edition. They said, I said, I'm going to call it Endless Customers. And she said, I will give you a blank advance right now. Like, as soon as I said the title, it's called Endless Customers, by the way. She said, I want to give you and she just put out a really large number. And I was like, look at that. Of course, I was thinking, why didn't you tell me the title was so important? But that was like the moment, Rory, I realized even a publisher who has spent their whole life titling books can succumb to the same inherent flaws that all these authors do, which is naming it the vehicle versus the destination, to your point.
Mm-hmm. It's the most common mistake that authors make.
The destination.
And it's just like you spent so much time on this thing, you fall in love with the thing, but no one on the outside knows what that thing is. They only know what they know, and you have to name it in relation to the thing that they want, the thing that they know, the thing that they understand right now. And it is just that's funny. I've never heard that story about the advance.
Good ones.
But it is that way because it's not a gimmick that we invented. It's a pattern that we identified that's rooted in human psychology.
Yep.
Is we go, we pay attention to things that we want, and if you just name your thing to complete that sentence, I want blank, now all of a sudden I'm paying attention. If you name your thing as anything other than something that completes that sentence, I want blank, I'm not as likely to pay attention. And so,
and man, I tell you, I'm catching people all the time on this, because I get authors constantly reaching out and want to be authors, like, and they're sending me their stuff. You deal with this. I can't imagine how much you deal with it. And 9 out of 10 times, I'm like, hey, just so you know, it doesn't pass the I Want I Wish test. And they're like, what's the I Want I Wish test? I'm like, well, here's how it works. And every time they're like, oh my goodness. I'm like, yeah. So there you go. they end up thanking me, like months later. He just changed the whole trajectory of the book because of that right there.
That's so good.
I always credit you though, big dog.
Thank you. Thank you. So what do you think are the biggest mistakes that people are making right now in how they're creating content? What are they not doing that they should be doing? What is something that you didn't used to do that you do now? Where are they falling victim to like the trend versus going, no, if you want to move your business forward, what is the one piece of content that we need to create like tomorrow?
Yeah, let me give you a few different things here, okay? In Endless Customers, it's really built on 4 pillars. We call it the 4 pillars of a known and trusted brand. So if you're listening to this right now, let's do an audit together if you're listening to this, because I really want you to be self-aware and honest. And I want you to answer, are you doing these 4 pillars right now? Number 1, are we consistently saying online what others in our space aren't willing to say? That's number 1.
These are 4 things that create trust.
Yes.
In how you market.
If you want to be the most known and trusted brand in your market, wherever that is, local or national, these are the 4 pillars you build your content strategy off of. Number 1, you got to be willing to say what others aren't willing to say. All right. The cost example is a perfect example of that one. Okay. Number 2, you have to be willing to show with video what others aren't willing to show. Now, there's a bunch of examples I could get on this, but let me just give a really, really simple. Let me give a simple example of this one. I was recently, I needed to purchase a travel van, passenger van. My youth group was constantly, they were going to different activities, but they weren't going together. So I'm like, I want to get everybody a van because I want my kids with all their friends, and they go to these activities together. So I found a van in Wisconsin. I live in Virginia. I was interested in the van. It's a small used car dealership. Always risky, right?
Yeah.
Well, in this case, he has a video, and this is how he starts the video. And you tell me, Rory Vaden, have you ever seen a video, someone do this before? This is how he starts off the video. Hey, folks, before I show you this passenger van today and everything I like about it, let's first start off with any flaws. I'm going to show you any scratches. I'm going to show you any dents. And I'm going to talk about any issues before we talk about the good stuff. Now, what do you think I did as soon as he said that?
Yeah, you engage, you tune in.
I dropped my guard. That's called disarmament. Oftentimes, most people, they come into your content almost like with their arms folded, just like, let's see what this guy's got. Like, I don't know if I'm going to trust this company. Whereas if you come right out the gate and say, all right, let's talk about what's wrong with this vehicle. I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. Right? And so he showed what was wrong with the vehicle, minor stuff. But I was like, you got me, man. Of course, did I buy that? Yeah, I bought that vehicle. I'd never seen any used car dealership do that. So it's no different than if you're a coach, let's say. A lot of coaches.
Financial advisor example.
Financial advisor. Perfect example. So a financial advisor oftentimes will say who they work with. But do they say and show who they don't work with? Not in a snarky way, in like a really honest way. So as a financial advisor, you might say, now, you're probably saying to yourself, are we a good fit for each other? Let's be really, really honest, and let's talk about who we're not a good fit for. If your net worth is less than $1 million, we're probably not going to be a good fit for you. Now, this doesn't mean we don't appreciate you haven't done well in your life. It just means that we made a decision as a company that we're only going to work with individuals that have a net worth between $1 and $10 million. We decided not to go above $10 million because we said we want to have a sweet spot. We want to know exactly who our customer is, and we want to be able to tailor the way we do our advisement towards them. Now, you could go on about that, but that's just like non-snarky, honest, hey, I really appreciate that. Thanks for letting me know. And how many financial advisors are really explicit like that? Again, you've got to show, we call it the law of the coin. You need to show both sides of the coin. You can't just say, this is who we work with. This is why we're awesome. This is why we love what we do. You got to show the other side. The moment you show the other side of the coin, that's when you become much, much more trusted. It's no different with brand builders. Brand builders should have a very explicit messaging that says, now, we're not a good fit for you if. The problem is, most companies, the only time they do this, they do it, like I said, in a snarky way. They'll say something like, well, if you don't value great customer service, we're not a good fit for you. Really? Come on now. That's not how you, when I would talk about fiberglass pools, I'd say, fiberglass pools are not for everybody. They might not be for you. So let's look at who they're for and who they're not for. If you want a pool that's longer than 40 feet, I can tell you right now, it's probably not going to be a good fit for you because they don't get longer than 40 feet. If you want a pool that's super customized, they don't get super customized. They're preset. See, so this is one of the big mistakes. We don't disarm well. And disarming is one of the best hooks you can have with your content, especially that bottom of the funnel content, because the person expects you to sell something. You quickly disarm them to show that you're unbiased, that you have their best intention at heart. You do that, you're cooking. So that is one of the big mistakes.
What else should you show? Like when you said that you should show things with video, I thought you were going to show more like behind the scenes or customer transformations, like before and after.
Yeah. Oh, all those things you should show, but oftentimes the things that you should show show all the good, but the big point is show the bad. It sounds odd, but you might see it as bad, but actually the customer sees it as good. So it's no different than if I was a coach, let's say, and I have 2 coaching companies, right? So this is something I think about a lot. We would want to be very, very and show very explicitly how we work, how we don't work, so that people understand exactly what it looks like, right? So, for example, we have a major culture of role plays within, we have a sales and leadership coaching company. 80% of it is role plays. We show what that looks like. We want people to say, that's exactly what I want, or there's no way I'm going to put myself in that line of fire. That's just a simple example of it. Now, all those other things, you want to show those things too, but show what others aren't showing. That's number 2. Number 3, sell in ways that others, this is the third pillar, sell in ways others aren't willing to sell in your space. Now, earlier I mentioned that stat to you, 75% of all buyers say they would prefer to have a seller-free sales experience. One of the major sales trends that everybody should be leaning into, most people are not, is what is self-service. And this is when you give the prospect an opportunity to take an action or get an answer that previously they would have gotten by talking to a human first. So it's an interactive tool of some sort. An example of this, classic example, a pricing estimator. By you offering a service and putting a pricing estimator on your homepage, if you do that and you give people a sense for what they're going to spend, you'll see that your conversions go up 300% every single time. I have a company that does this. It's called priceguide.ai. We help organizations create pricing estimators. It's crazy how many more conversions you get as soon as you do this. Okay? So that's a simple way to do it as a pricing estimator. Incredibly effective. Second way that you can do self-service is through what would be self-selection tools, which is essentially a recommendation. So let me give you an example. At Brand Builders Group, you've got what is the basic community, and you've got the community where you can work with a coach one-on-one. All right, I can't remember the exact names.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking about, because we have our premier membership, which is like our virtual self-study membership, and it's like, if you don't want to travel, and if you hold yourself accountable, and like, that's really good for you. Then our flagship membership is called Pro, which is you want one-on-one coaching, you want in-person events, you want to like interact like in person with other people. That's Pro. And then we have private clients, which are in person, but you don't meet any other clients. It's just you locked in a room for 2 days, and it's like you get stuff done quickly, and it's high touch, and you'd like crank it out.
Right. So there's a certain amount of people that would really love to be able to self-select which of those three is ideal for them before they talk to one of the humans at Brand Builders Group. So if you had a tool on the site that essentially said, what is the right program for you at Brand Builders Group? You ask a series of questions, and then at the end of that, it gives a recommendation based on what you described. And the key is you're not trying to manipulate or slot someone into a group. You really want to ask the questions in such a way that they say, this is so helpful, so that when they have the first sales call, they say to Jenny, I already know exactly what it is I want. I did that little thing on your site, and I know that I want the pro level. I want to work with a coach. That's totally me, one-on-one, all day long, right? Jenny, I need that intensive. Yeah, I'm going to do the pro, but I think I want some of those 2 days as well. So the whole conversation is different. Because what happens is, you've heard of sunk cost fallacy, right? The more time somebody spends with your content, especially if it's interactive, especially if they designed it, the more committed they are to work with you. So by the process of them going through it, let me give you another example of this. It's a third example of self-service, which is self-scheduling with salespeople and or coaches. And this might sound foreign, but it's really powerful. We've done a bunch of studies on this, and what we found is oftentimes people, you've seen this before, somebody will have a tool on their website that allows them to schedule a time for a conversation without talking to a human. That's helpful, but that's not like really powerful. What's really powerful is, imagine this. And hopefully it's okay if I use Brand Builders as a case study here, just like how you could do it as a hypothetical. Brand Builders has a multiplicity of really, really great coaches. One of the biggest questions that people have if they're going to have that one-on-one coaching is, am I going to be a good fit with my coach? Like, how am I going to decide that? So what we have found, and this happens with sales or whenever there's a group of people, that, like, let's say coaches, or it could be anybody, it could be attorneys. Imagine on the Brand Builder site, every coach was listed. There was a video where that coach was describing themselves, and there was a bio that they could read about them, so they could see them, they could hear their voice, they can learn from them, and then the person can choose who they want to work with. Here's what the data has shown us. When someone chooses who they work with, closing rates double every single time. Full stop. Because it becomes almost like an Uberization of the sales process. Because now all of a sudden, they're like, I'm no longer concerned with who I'm going to work with, because I feel like I chose my person. Something about their bio, about their video resonated with them. Now, you as an owner might say, yeah, it's really hard because we have capacity issues, we have this, that. There's ways around all those things. Sometimes you might not show everybody. Sometimes you might show if they're at capacity, not available right now. But it's really powerful. And what it does, and we see this is really cool with salespeople or with like when there's a group to choose from, those people up their game. They improve their game. They show themselves, they work on showing themselves better. And the whole company rises because of it. But a doubling of the closing rate is phenomenal. And that's because you got to choose your date and you weren't given a date. It wasn't blind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fascinating stuff, Marcus. Like really, really interesting. So where do you want people to go if they want more, if they want to stay connected to you and what you're up to?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me, make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn first, because I'm a baller on LinkedIn, Rory Vaden.
Okay.
Right? I take my LinkedIn business seriously, put my best stuff there first. And make sure you get the book, endlesscustomers.com. Obviously, you can get it on Amazon. It's on Audible as well. And you can find me as a speaker. I speak full-time all over the world, marcussheridan.com.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for this. This is a lot. This is some really great, compelling data points and some like challenging things to be thinking through. So I appreciate the conversation, and as I said, the intellectually stimulating conversation is what we're after. So appreciate you being here, buddy, and we wish you the best.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thank you.